Right. In this video, I'm going to give a little review of what microeconomics is. So first question is, what do you study? So in microeconomics, we study individuals, households, firms, and the government, and how the government interacts with these two. So we're going to spend we're not going to actually spend that much time on firms in this class, although we'll talk about how they affect individuals and households. So the beginning part of this semester, we're going to start off, we're talking about households and individual decisions in terms of people's decisions about what they do in their household, about marriage, and also about how this affects their participation in the labor market. And then later on in the course, we'll talk about how they interact with firms in the labor market, and we'll also then come in and talk about what role government plays in all of this. So let's just review some basic ideas right now. So we can think of economics, one of the key concepts in economics is about scarcity, right? So scarcity, this idea, we have unlimited wants, and those are more than our limited resources that we have to fulfill those wants. So two big things that are often scarce, for most people, money, and for everybody, time. And therefore, because if without scarcity, economics would be not very interesting at all. But because we have scarcity, then we have to make choices. So we have scarcity, and therefore we have to make good choices because we have to trade off between these different things. So we're assuming here that people behave as if they are comparing the costs and the benefits, right? They behave as if they're comparing these costs and benefits. They're not just making these choices randomly. That if the costs and benefits change, then people will make a different decision. So we're assuming there's some degree of rationality going on here. So. So we got this unlimited wants, and we had limited availability of resources. So that's what's going on our scarcity side. And therefore, they're weighing the benefits and costs of their decision and trying to make good use of their resources. So this is the basics of microeconomics. Let's go a little bit deeper into these concepts. So back to choices. So people are rational when they behave as if they're comparing costs and benefits. And we believe people respond to incentives. So what do we mean by that? Well, this could be natural incentives in a system, or it could be explicit incentives given by the government. So for example, if the government changes a rule about when you can get full Social Security benefits, then people will wait longer to retire on average, right? It doesn't mean everyone will wait longer to retire, but it means it will have some effect on people's decisions. It also could mean, like in a classroom environment, if a teacher gave an incentive that was like a bad incentive, or sort of, you could get an A even if you don't study, then probably students would study less. So that would be an example of responding to incentives. They respond to the system that they are dealing with. And the last one is decisions are made on the margin. This is about marginal analysis, which basically means we're usually not deciding, do I do this or not do this? We're often deciding, do I do a little bit more or a little bit less? So suppose you're studying for a test. You don't decide, oh, am I going to study or not study? But usually while you're studying, you might be deciding, oh, should I study another hour or should I study another 2 hours? You're kind of making decisions as you go. And then at some point, you probably decide, oh, I've done enough. I'm going to take my chances with what I've done. So this is an example of a marginal decision where you're deciding to do a little bit more or a little bit less. Um, on the side of our scarcity, so we have everything has alternative uses. So for example, our time, you could use your time to take a class. You could use it to relax. You could use it to spend time with your family, do something fun, work at a job. So we have to consider these alternative uses because of this scarcity factor, that we don't have enough of this resource to go around. So you have to consider what the benefit of this resource would be used elsewhere. And therefore, this creates trade-offs, right? So when you choose to do one thing, then you miss out on something else. So that's the idea of the trade-off. And then we can measure these trade-offs using opportunity costs, right? So for example, the opportunity cost of you taking this course is the alternative uses, the best alternative use of the money and the time that you're giving up by being here. So just some final reminders. The trade-off, the idea that because of scarcity, if you produce more of one thing, you're going to have to produce less of something else, right? And then finally, opportunity cost is the highest value alternative that must be given up to engage in an activity. The reason it's not all of the alternatives is because often you couldn't do all those alternatives all at the same time, right? So suppose you spend some money on something, so you buy a new phone, right? That's very expensive. To buy a new phone for like $500-600. So this has opportunity cost, and it's, well, what else would you have done with this money, right? So but you can't have done 10 different things with that same $500. So this is sort of what's the best thing you could have done with that money. Would be the opportunity cost of that decision. Okay, so let's just use an example to kind of finish this off. So our ultimate scarce resource is time, and we're going to be talking a lot about time in this course. So families must divide time between things. So if you have children, for example, then you have a big demand on your time. So they must divide their time between paid work and some childcare, and they probably have to do some chores and some errands if you want to have groceries and a clean house. And hopefully they'll also take some time for leisure to have fun, right? So they have to decide how to allocate their time. And if you're like most people, especially as people get older and have more responsibilities, often there's not enough time for all four of these things. And so they have to make some trade-offs. They can't do as much of everything as they want to, and they have to decide which one is a better use of their time and which things to cut back. So this is this is the idea. Now, one of the things, just as to kind of introduce us into this course, is that these trade-off choices are often a little different for men and women. Because sometimes, especially if a family is following some more traditional gender roles, then some of the certain responsibilities may fall more heavily on women than they do on men. Okay, so the family responsibilities, especially responsibilities related to children or things in the household, traditionally tended to fall more heavily on women than they did men, and this might cause them to make different choices. So right now we're not analyzing this. I'm just giving it as an example. We will analyze this much more in a few weeks later in the course, right? So, but anytime we make our choice, we have this opportunity cost. So for example, you might get a chance to work overtime at your job, and you can make more money, and also you can look good with your boss and get a chance to get promoted. But then that would be, you might lose out on time, spending time with your family, time with your kids. But then if on the other hand, if you were to stay home and spend more time with the kids and turn down the overtime or the extra work, then you lose out on this potential benefit. So this just gives us an example of the trade-offs in a realistic situation related to family. So we'll come back to all this in a few weeks when we start talking about our model of the economic model of the family.